I am 89 years old, and for the last quarter century, I've lived a lie that most men would find suicidal. The secret to becoming a man isn't what you think. It didn't happen when I made my first million or bought that silver Porsche. It happened when I lost everything that made me feel like one. My name is Samuel Rothstein, and I've buried 3 business partners, watched 2 marriages crumble from the same silence that nearly killed mine, and spent 5 years running from a truth my wife knew the whole time. I started noticing something about the men who died angry, alone, and full of regret. It wasn't their bodies that failed them first. It was their definition of manhood. I'm going to tell you about the moment I lost my manhood at 63 and why it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because if you're building your identity on what I built mine on, you're already dying inside and don't even know it. In the summer of 1999, I was the king of Greenwich, Connecticut. I ran a private equity firm that ate smaller companies for breakfast. I wore $15,000 Italian suits and drove a silver Porsche 911. My handshake could close a deal or crush a career. My wife, Clementine, was the jewel of the country club. When we walked into a room, people noticed. I thought I was invincible. At 63, a routine surgical procedure for a chronic condition went catastrophically wrong. Not wrong in a way that would kill me. Wrong in a way that stripped me of my physical virility entirely. Permanent. Irreversible. Complete. In an instant, the biological engine of my ego was gutted. I wasn't just retired from the bedroom. I felt retired from the human race. For 6 weeks, I told myself it was temporary. Try pills, treatments, specialists. Every morning I'd wake up and check, hoping my body had remembered how to be what I needed it to be. Then came the morning when I knew this was forever. I sat in my car in the driveway for an hour, paralyzed by pure terror. Not physical pain, the fear that I'd lost the thing that made me a man. When Clementine asked how I was feeling, I said, "Fine." Everything went fine. That was my first catastrophic mistake. Number 1, I ran instead of staying. 6 months later, I bought a penthouse in Scottsdale, Arizona. Told Clementine the dry air would help my vitality. Told my partners I was expanding Western operations. The truth? I put 1,200 miles of desert between me and a bedroom where I couldn't be what I thought a husband should be. I chose geographic distance over honest conversation. That penthouse was sterile. Glass, steel, no warmth. I'd fly out twice a month, sit on the balcony drinking scotch, feeling nothing. She never questioned it. Just smiled and said, "Whatever you think is best, Sam." Now I know why she didn't question it. Number 2, I became a monster in the boardroom. If I couldn't prove my manhood in one arena, I'd dominate another. I became cruel. There was a junior partner named David Chen. Smart kid, 35, hungry. He made a minor error on a presentation. I screamed at him in front of everyone, called him incompetent, threatened his job. David started emulating my behavior. Thought that's what success looked like. He died of a heart attack at 52. Left behind a wife and 2 kids. At his funeral, his widow said, he was always so stressed, always trying to prove something. I thought being a man meant being a monster if you couldn't be a lover. But cruelty isn't strength. It's just cruelty wearing an expensive suit every hostile takeover. Every brutal negotiation, I was trying to make myself feel big. It never worked. Not once. Number 3 was the worst. I let my marriage die by inches. From 1999 to 2004, Clementine tried everything. Planned dinners, showed up in Scottsdale to surprise me, asked gentle questions. I shut her down every time. I've got a call. Not now. Why are you always pushing? Our 40th anniversary, she wore her dress from our honeymoon. Emerald green, altered to still fit. Made reservations where I'd proposed. I showed up 45 minutes late. Took a business call during dessert. When I finally put the phone down, she was staring at her wine glass, turning it slowly. The candlelight caught her face. I saw the resignation, the giving up. I'd moved into the guest bedroom. Said my snoring kept her awake. Really, I couldn't bear lying beside her, knowing what I couldn't give. Every conversation became performance. Every I love you became a lie, hiding the bigger lie. My friend Robert Marcus. Same situation after prostate surgery. His wife left after 35 years. Said she'd begged him to talk for 2 years. Robert drank himself to death within 2 years of the divorce. I was headed down the same road. At 68, 5 years after the surgery, I had a business trip to Savannah. The meeting ended early. I ducked into a used bookstore to escape the heat. On a shelf marked Recent Donations, I found Clementine's journal. The burgundy leather I'd given her for Christmas years ago. She must have donated boxes during spring cleaning. My hands shook as I opened it. I expected complaints about intimacy. Instead, I found one sentence dated 2 years prior. My husband is so busy trying to be a statue of a great man that he's forgotten how to be a person. She knew. She had always known. My silence wasn't protecting her. It was killing us both. I didn't return to my hotel. I drove to the Blue Ridge Mountains and sat at an overlook until dawn. For 63 years, I'd been a man by default, powered by hormones and biology. When those were stripped away, I had a choice I'd never faced. Disappear into shame, or build a version of manhood that didn't rely on a biological clock. As the sun came up, I realized something. I'd spent 5 years trying to be the man I was before, but that man died on the operating table at 63. The question wasn't how to get him back. The question was, who would I choose to become? I started the car and pointed it north toward Connecticut, toward home, toward Clementine. I didn't know if she'd still be there. Didn't know if sorry would mean anything after 5 years of lies. But the man who'd driven away from Greenwich 5 years ago had to die before anyone real could live. I had 12 hours to figure out how to tell my wife the truth. 12 hours to stop being a statue. 12 hours to find out if it was too late. The drive from Savannah to Connecticut took 12 hours. Her journal entry repeated in my head like a mantra. Statue of a great man and forgotten how to be a person. I rehearsed words that dissolved before I could finish them. Remembered our wedding day, the births of our children, early years when we'd actually talked. My hand shook so hard on the steering wheel I had to pull over twice. Not from age, from fear. Her car was in the driveway, lights on in the kitchen. I stood at my own front door like a stranger, key in hand, unable to turn it. Finally, I walked inside. Clementine sat at the kitchen table reading. She looked up. No surprise in her eyes. She'd expected me to run longer. "I found your journal," I said. She was still. "You knew. You always knew." Of course I knew, Sam. What I did next is the hardest thing a man of my generation can do. I sat across from her. And for the first time in my life, I cried in front of another person. Eyes, not gentle tears, body shaking sobs. The words tumbled out. "I'm afraid. I feel empty. I don't know who I am without... I'm sorry, God, Clementine, I'm so sorry." She let me finish, then reached across the table and took my hand. "I didn't need you to be Superman," she said. "I just needed you to be here." She'd known within weeks of the surgery, the way I flinched from her touch, the sudden business trips. She'd been waiting 5 years for me to stop running. "I thought I'd lost you," she said. "Not to the surgery, to your pride." We talked until dawn. I admitted every defense mechanism, every lie, every escape. She admitted her own loneliness, her fear of losing me completely. We made an agreement. Start over, but with truth. I moved back from Scottsdale within the month. We began therapy. Humiliating for a man who'd built empires, but necessary. Number 4, I stopped performing and started participating. Therapy taught me emotional vocabulary I'd never had. The first time I said "I need you" without irony or manipulation, Clementine cried. I started learning her world. Her garden. She'd grown roses for 20 years, and I'd never noticed. Her book club. I attended, listened to women discuss novels. Her volunteer work at the hospital with terminal patients. Within 3 months, I laughed. Actually laughed. I'd forgotten the sound of my own genuine laughter. I'd been so busy trying to be oak, strong, unmovable, dominant. I'd forgotten trees also bend, give shade, and grow toward light. Number 5, I stopped equating manhood with invulnerability. At 69, I told my brother about my condition for the first time. Expected judgment. He said, "Jesus, I thought you were dying. You're just human." I joined a support group for men with similar issues. Met a man named Frank, 58, same condition. 3 weeks later, Frank killed himself rather than tell his wife. Left a note. "Can't be half a man." At his memorial, his wife sobbed, "I would have loved you anyway." I started noticing the men who survived this weren't the toughest. They were the most honest. Strength isn't pretending you don't need help. Strength is asking for it. Number 6. I stopped trying to be useful every goddamn second. I sold my shares in the private equity firm, stepped away completely. The first month of retirement, I panicked, felt purposeless. Then I learned to sit on my porch without guilt. Every morning at 6 a.m., coffee, watching sunrise. No phone, no news, no agenda. First time in 45 years not planning the next conquest. Clementine started joining me. We'd just talk about nothing, about everything. For 63 years, I'd measured my worth by productivity. Turns out, sitting beside your wife watching the sun come up is productive too. It produces peace. Number 7. This is the last one, might be the most important. I stopped living for someday. My whole life. When I retire, we'll travel. When I slow down, we'll reconnect. When I have time. At 70, Clementine was diagnosed with early stage cancer. She survived, but the scare woke me up. I almost lost her while still planning our future. Our friends Henry and Margaret had planned a retirement trip to Italy for 40 years. Henry died 3 weeks before their plane tickets. Margaret went alone, cried in every cathedral, and my own father promised to teach me to fish when things settled down. He died when I was 32. We never went fishing. We made a list of everything we'd postponed. Drive Pacific Coast Highway, renew vows, learn to dance, visit grandchildren more, say I love you, like we meant it. At 71, we moved to Carmel by the sea. Small house, ocean view, filled with light. I donated my Italian suits to charity. Watched the truck drive away. Clementine asked, "Any regrets?" "Only that it took me so long." I'm 89 now, sitting on my Carmel porch. Clementine passed 2 years ago, age 85, peacefully holding my hand. My body is failing. Bad knees, heart medication, forgetful moments. But I have inner peace I never had at 63. What I lost? Porsche, penthouse, corporate power, physical virility, traditional manhood. What I gained? 21 years of genuine marriage. Relationship with my children who'd been strangers. Friendships based on truth, self-respect, peace. If you're reading this and you're still building your life on what I built mine on, stop. Manhood isn't biology, it's choice. Every single day, choosing honesty over image, choosing presence over performance, choosing love over ego. I'm 89. I won't be here much longer, but I'll die as a man, not because of what's between my legs, but because of who I chose to become when that didn't matter anymore. Stop running from your failures. Stop compensating with cruelty. Stop performing instead of participating. Stop equating strength with invulnerability. Stop measuring worth by productivity. Stop living for someday. Stop letting biology define your humanity. You have permission to fail and still be a man. You have permission to cry and still be strong. You have permission to need help and still have dignity. But you don't have permission to lie to the people who love you. Not anymore. I finish my coffee. Look at Clementine's empty chair beside me. I speak to her like I do every morning. I became the man you deserved. Took me too long, but I got there. Ocean waves in the distance. Sun fully risen. The mailman waves, calls out about the weather. I wave back. I stand to go inside. Look back at the view one last time. I lost my manhood at 63, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because when the beast died, the human finally woke up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some roses to water, Clementine's roses, and that morning light is looking mighty fine.